There is a specific kind of suffering that looks like a breakdown from the outside, but is actually the beginning of something else entirely. Carl Jung spent his career studying it. He saw it in his patients, he lived through it himself, and he gave it a name that most people never hear until they are already in the middle of it. He called it individuation, the process by which the person you were constructed to be starts dying, and the person you actually are begins to emerge. The problem is that no one tells you when it is happening. There is no announcement, no formal beginning. Most people who are going through a psychological awakening do not recognize it because it does not feel like waking up. It feels like falling apart. It feels like something is wrong with you, like you are broken in a way that the people around you cannot see and that you cannot explain. But what if nothing is wrong with you? What if everything you are experiencing right now, the discomfort, the restlessness, the strange grief that has no obvious cause, is not a sign of collapse but a sign of emergence? Jung identified a pattern, a specific sequence of psychological shifts that occur when the unconscious mind begins demanding integration. When the self you built to survive stops being enough and something deeper starts pushing through. Here are 7 signs that this process is already underway in your life, and the last one is the sign that Jung considered the most unmistakable. The first sign: the things that used to satisfy you have stopped working, not gradually, not in the way that interests naturally shift over time. This is different. This is the experience of reaching for something that reliably brought you comfort or pleasure or distraction and finding it completely hollow. The social events that used to energize you now drain you. The entertainment that used to hold your attention now feels like noise. The goals you spent years chasing now feel strangely meaningless, even if you are still achieving them, especially if you are still achieving them. Jung would have recognized this immediately as the beginning of what he called persona dissolution. The persona is the mask you wear for the world, the curated, socially acceptable version of yourself that you built starting in childhood. It is not fake exactly, but it is incomplete. It is the version of you that learned which behaviors earned approval, which traits were safe to show, which desires were acceptable to pursue. And for years, maybe decades, it worked. You got the job, the relationship, the status, the life that the persona was designed to secure. And now something inside you is rejecting all of it, not because you failed, but because you succeeded at becoming someone you were never meant to be. This is profoundly disorienting because there is no external crisis to explain it. Your life might look fine from the outside, good even, and yet you feel an emptiness that has no logical source. Jung saw this as one of the earliest and most reliable signs that the unconscious is beginning to withdraw its energy from the structures of the false self. The things that fed the persona no longer feed you because you are no longer the persona. You just do not know what you are instead. Not yet. The second sign: your dreams become unusually vivid, disturbing, or impossible to ignore. Jung considered dreams the most direct communication channel between the conscious mind and the unconscious. For most of your life, this channel operates quietly. You dream, you forget, you move on. But during a psychological awakening, the volume gets turned up dramatically. You might start having dreams that feel more real than waking life. Dreams with recurring symbols, recurring locations, recurring figures that seem to carry a weight and significance that lingers for hours after you wake. You might dream of houses with rooms you have never seen before, of water, deep water, rising water, of being chased by something you cannot see, of encounters with strangers who feel ancient and familiar at the same time. Jung spent decades cataloging these dream patterns and found striking consistency across patients, cultures, and time periods. He called the recurring figures archetypes, universal patterns, embedded in what he termed the collective unconscious. And he noticed that when these archetypal images begin flooding a person's dreams, it almost always coincides with a major psychological transition. The unconscious is not tormenting you. it is trying to get your attention. It is sending up material that your waking mind has been refusing to look at, and it is using the only language it has: symbol, image, feeling. If your dream life has recently become impossible to ignore, that is not random. That is your psyche knocking on a door that you have kept locked, and it is done waiting for an invitation. The third sign: you suddenly cannot tolerate inauthenticity in others, and far more painfully, in yourself. This one tends to catch people off guard because it does not feel like growth. It feels like becoming difficult, critical, hard to please. You start noticing the gap between what people say and what they mean, between how they present themselves and who they actually are. Conversations that once felt normal now feel performative. Social rituals that you participated in without question now feel unbearable. But the truly destabilizing part is when this same lens turns inward. You start hearing your own voice and catching the rehearsed quality of it. You notice the ways you automatically adjust yourself depending on who you are with. The laugh you perform, the opinions you soften, the version of yourself you serve up, because it is the one that keeps things smooth. Jung described this as the persona becoming transparent to itself. For most of your life, you identified with your mask so completely that you did not know it was a mask. Now you can see it, and you cannot unsee it. Every interaction becomes a confrontation with the distance between who you are performing to be and who you actually are underneath. This is uncomfortable, but Jung considered it essential. You cannot integrate what you cannot see. And the moment you begin seeing your own inauthenticity clearly, the process of building something more honest has already begun, even if it feels like everything is falling apart. The fourth sign: relationships that once felt stable begin shifting in ways that confuse you. Some friendships that lasted years suddenly feel like they belong to a different person. Because they do. They belonged to the persona. And as the persona starts dissolving, the relationships that were built on it lose their foundation. You might find yourself pulling away from people you have known for decades without being able to articulate why. Or you might notice that certain people in your life start reacting to you differently, with suspicion, with discomfort, with subtle resistance. Not because you did anything wrong, but because the version of you they bonded with is changing, and that change threatens the unspoken agreement the relationship was built on. Jung understood that every relationship involves an unconscious contract. I will be this version of myself, and you will be that version of yourself, and we will both pretend these masks are real. When one person begins to drop the mask, it destabilizes the entire dynamic. The other person feels it, even if they cannot name it. And their response, whether it is withdrawal, anger, or attempts to pull you back into the old pattern, tells you something important about whether the relationship was based on genuine connection or on mutual performance. This is one of the loneliest phases of a psychological awakening. You are changing in ways that the people around you did not agree to and may not understand. Some relationships will survive this transition. They will deepen, in fact, because they were always based on something real beneath the masks. Others will quietly end, not with a dramatic confrontation, but with a slow mutual recognition that the people you have each become no longer fit together the way they once did. Let that happen. Jung would say the relationships that fall away during this process are not losses, they are completions. The fifth sign: a strange grief arrives, not for anything you lost, but for something you cannot name. This is perhaps the most confusing experience in a psychological awakening because it defies logic. Nothing bad happened. Nobody died. No relationship ended. And yet you find yourself carrying a sadness that is enormous and sourceless. It might hit you while driving, while standing in the shower, while lying in bed at night staring at the ceiling. A wave of mourning that seems completely disconnected from your actual life circumstances. Jung would identify this as the ego beginning to grieve its own dissolution. The ego, in Jungian psychology, is not arrogance. It is your sense of who you are, your identity structure, the narrative you have been telling yourself about yourself for your entire life. I am this kind of person. I want these things. I belong in this world in this specific way. During a psychological awakening, that narrative starts breaking down. Not because it was entirely false, but because it was incomplete. And as the ego begins losing its grip on the story it spent decades constructing, it mourns. It grieves the certainty it once had. It grieves the simplicity of a life where the mask fit comfortably and the questions stayed quiet. This grief is not depression, although it can look like it from the outside and even feel like it from the inside. The difference, and this is critical, is that depression typically involves a loss of meaning. Everything feels empty and pointless. The grief of a psychological awakening involves an excess of meaning. Everything suddenly feels too significant, too charged. You are not feeling nothing, you are feeling everything, and your old emotional containers are simply not large enough to hold it. If you are experiencing this, do not medicate it away. Do not distract yourself from it. Do not let anyone convince you that something is wrong with you. Sit with it. Jung believed that this grief, fully felt and not fled from, is the doorway to the deepest transformation a human being can undergo. The sixth sign. You become intensely drawn to solitude, not from withdrawal, but from necessity. This often gets misread as isolation, as antisocial behavior, as pulling away from the world. And the people who care about you might worry. They might ask if you are okay. They might try to pull you back into activity, into socializing, into the familiar rhythms of your old life. But what is actually happening is something entirely different. Your psyche is demanding quiet, so it can do its work. Jung understood that individuation requires periods of introversion, not the personality trait, the psychological function, the turning of attention inward, toward the unconscious, toward the material that has been accumulating beneath the surface of your awareness for years and is now ready to be encountered. This is why many people going through a psychological awakening develop sudden interests in things they never cared about before. Journaling, long walks alone, meditation, reading about mythology, dreams, philosophy, psychology. These are not random new hobbies. They are the conscious mind building bridges to the unconscious, creating channels through which the buried material can finally rise into awareness. Jung himself went through an intense period of this between 1913 and 1917. He withdrew from much of his public life, spent hours recording his dreams and visions, and engaged in what he later called active imagination, a deliberate dialogue with the figures and images emerging from his unconscious. He described this period as the most important of his life, not the most comfortable, the most important. Because everything he later developed, every concept that millions of people now use to understand themselves, emerged from that descent into his own depths. If solitude is calling you right now, answer it, not as an escape from life, but as a descent toward the life that is trying to emerge. The seventh sign, and this is the one Jung considered the most unmistakable. The sign that individuation is not just beginning, but actively underway. You feel pulled towards something you cannot name, not a goal, not a career, not a person. Something larger and less defined, a sense that there is a version of your life that you have not yet accessed. A feeling that you are meant for something, but the something has no shape, no label, no clear path leading to it, just a gravitational pull that will not let you rest. Jung called this the emergence of the self, capital S. In his framework, the self is not the ego, it is not the persona, it is the totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, known and unknown, integrated into a unified whole. And the self has its own agenda, its own trajectory, its own sense of where your life needs to go. For most of your life, the ego runs the show. It makes plans, it sets goals, it pursues what it thinks it wants based on conditioning, social expectations, and the limited information available to conscious awareness. But during a psychological awakening, the self begins asserting itself, and its voice sounds nothing like the ego's. The ego speaks in specifics. I want this job, this relationship, this achievement. The self speaks in feelings, in pulls, in an unshakable sense that the life you are living, however successful it looks, is not the life you were meant for. You cannot articulate what the life you were meant for looks like because the ego does not have the vocabulary for it yet. You just know, with a certainty that lives somewhere below logic, that something is calling you forward. Jung described this as the most sacred experience in human psychology. The moment when a person stops living from the outside in, driven by external expectations and inherited scripts, and begins living from the inside out, guided by the deepest intelligence of their own psyche. This pull will not give you a detailed plan. It will not tell you exactly what to do next Monday, but it will give you something far more valuable: direction. Not a destination, but a compass bearing, a felt sense of alignment or misalignment with every choice you make from this point forward. If you are feeling this pull right now, if something in you knows that your current life is a chapter that is ending and not the whole book, then what you are experiencing is not a crisis. It is an awakening. And according to Jung, it is the most important thing that can happen to a human being. Not everyone will understand what you are going through. The people still comfortably wearing their masks will look at your discomfort and see dysfunction. They will offer advice designed to help you put the mask back on. Go back to normal. Stop overthinking. Be grateful for what you have. Do not listen. What is happening to you is not a problem to be solved. It is a process to be trusted. The discomfort is not a sign that you are moving in the wrong direction. It is a sign that you are finally moving at all. If this described what you are living right now, subscribe to this channel. Everything we create here is designed for this exact phase of the journey, the phase where the old self is dying and the new one has not yet fully arrived. Hit the notification bell so you do not miss the next video, where we go into the actual practice of shadow work, Jung's method for integrating everything that rises to the surface during an awakening like this. Jung once wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. If that process has begun in you, even if it terrifies you, even if it has cost you comfort and certainty and the easy confidence you used to carry, know this: you are not losing yourself. You are finding yourself, and the person you are becoming has been waiting for you far longer than you know. Which of these 7 signs hit you the hardest? Which one made you stop and think, that is exactly what I have been feeling? Tell me in the comments, because naming what is happening to you is the first act of the awakening itself.